Welcome to the Naturally Nourished podcast that delivers cutting-edge food as medicine solutions for optimal health. Allie Miller is a nutrition expert sought out by the media and America's top medical institutes for her revolutionary functional medicine interventions. From disease treatment to prevention, every episode will empower you with ways to put yourself back in control of your health. Please note, the topics discussed are for educational purposes only. Now welcome, integrative dietitians Allie Miller and her co-host Becki Yu.
Welcome to the Naturally Nourished podcast. You are joining us for episode 337, Homebirth and Postpartum Updates. In this episode, I'm going to be telling you about my home birth with Mabel, sharing updates from postpartum, and hopefully I can remember it all because she actually just turned 6 months this past weekend.
Yes, it feels like time has totally flown by. We were just laughing as I was looking at Miss Mabel this morning during dance class, and she's rolling over, scooting, and holding up her little shaker like it's a cell phone. I was like, oh, look at her. She's talking to her friends. I know, it's so fun. And she's just been such a delight to get to know in our household. And Miss Stella is loving her. And especially Noah is just the sweetest to watch as a big brother with his little sis.
Oh, yeah. And yeah, we just started baby-led weaning in our household, kind of impromptu, just handed her a sweet potato fry piece, that was homemade and everything. And she went after it. And then we've been potty training with Noah. So they're just getting big and babies don't keep.
Yeah, this is true. And she's at that perfect squishy hip side hold kind of thing where she's hanging onto your shoulder and all the things. I love it. So much to discuss today, and definitely a different experience. Although Becki shared her natural birth with Noah, that was at a birth center. So definitely there's going to be some changes and definitely a change of pace this time around that we'll cover in today's episode. And we'll also be giving you a lot of tips on postpartum care, essentials that you would want in your natural birthing bag or toolkit, and all of that good stuff. And this is right on the heels of last week recording Keto for Fertility. And so wild because in this group's keto class, we already have a keto miracle baby.
Yeah, we sure do.
So it's super fun to see that, the actual manifestation of those functional influences on the pituitary gland and insulin sensitivity, and how metabolic health and hormone health are so intertwined. So that's a great listen in case you missed that. And I think that this will be a great one to also kind of thumbnail and save if you're considering a natural home birth. And then even if doing a hospital birth, all of the postpartum stuff can absolutely support as well.
Totally. All right, let's talk about our Wimberley Wellness Workshop, or I think we're calling it Wellness in Wimberley. So many W's.
I know, yes.
But couple spots left for that.
Yeah, so it's coming up May 20th and 21st in Hill Country of Texas. So Wimberley is where I reside and where I have the Naturally Nourished Market, natural food store that I opened off of my brand concept. And we have had so many requests, and almost every time I see a patient in my clinic, they're always saying, I can't wait to come check out your market. It looks so amazing. I can't believe you've curated all of my favorite things in one spot. So this kind of was created as an opportunity to bring y'all out to the Naturally Nourished Market, but also a great way to provide something kind of comparable to our retreat that we did last spring without as much maintenance and demand. And this Wimberley Wellness Workshop will be available for women and men. So this could be a great way to get your spouse coming, or a boyfriend, someone that you want to get on track with your new revived food as medicine perspective, and want to make sure that it's not just coming from you, but they're hearing it direct from the source. It's going to be a really fun weekend. On Saturday, we're going to be doing a formal lecture. I'll be doing a functional medicine lecture, and then we'll be doing a lunch catered by the Naturally Nourished Market. We'll do some interactive food as medicine station breakouts, and then we will close that day out with a live podcast recording of Ask Us Anything, where Becki and I will literally just be kind of polling the audience. You'll be able to step up to the mic and ask us your burning questions. So we're super stoked about that. And then on Sunday, we will be doing a 2-hour cooking class with 4 to 5 different courses, menu still to be determined, but I know it's going to be amazing, and we'll be sharing that as soon as we develop that element. But we are halfway sold out already. So they're just shy of 20-something spots left. This is a really great opportunity at a pretty affordable price point, just $375 for both days, jam-packed with content, but also a lot of laughter and I think deep imprints on what will maintain sustainable lifestyle changes, a good amount of aha moments. And the focus of this is generalized wellness. So we'll talk a little bit about stress. We'll be talking about optimal eating and insulin resistance and blood sugar balance, as well as some stuff on gut health. But it'll be a really good overhaul, and I will absolutely be there hands-on direct for hugs and connection. And Becki and I will be there after both days. The event will be like 11 to 2:30. And then we're going to be swinging over to the Naturally Nourished Market for like a healthy hour where we'll have wine that is natural and bites and snacks and such. And so that's a great time for y'all to, just meet us directly and have a conversation with people that you're listening to from wherever you are in the country.
Yes, so fun. And when you grab your spot, you'll also get a guide to Wimberley that has been curated by Allie. And so places to stay, places to book your dinner reservation, things to do during downtime, etc. So you can really make a fun little weekend retreat out of it.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful place. Actually, aside from Sedona, Arizona, Wimberley is known to have energy vortexes based on the way that the rivers move through the valleys. And so there's some amazing swimming holes. There are amazing outdoor opportunities, and the water out here is emerald green. It's going to be just a lovely way to reset your nervous system, kind of re-up your food as medicine game, and have a whole lot of fun in the process. So go on over to alliemillerrd.com, grab your tickets while they're left, and we can't wait to meet you in person.
Okay. And then we also have a free webinar coming up. We're doing this kind of every other month thing. And the focus of this coming one, which is April 12th, is going to be women's hormones, fertility, and getting your cycle on track.
Yes. And so not just on fertility, mostly will be more cycle and management on fibroids, PCOS, but we will cover all of that element. So just noting again, although we have some content most recently on babies, there will be 3/4 of that for women. Mostly we're looking at like cycling women, painful periods, endometriosis, uterine health, a little bit on vaginal microflora, and so much more. It'll be great for getting into swimsuit season and just feeling the best you can in your body. And if fertility is one of your goals, we'll talk about some of the tools in our tool belt as far as optimizing egg health and all of the things.
Yes, so you can grab a spot. It's free. All you have to do is register in advance. It's a Zoom link, and it will be recorded and sent out to all participants who register. So even if you can't make it live, you can still go ahead and register, and we'll be doing a Q&A at the end. You'll get all of that in the archived webinar that we send to you.
Excellent. All right. And finally, let's have a word from Santa Cruz Medicinals before we get into all of the story of Miss Mabel's birth.
Yes.
So Santa Cruz Medicinals provides lab-tested cannabidiol, or CBD, that has the ability to improve moods, calm anxiety, and regulate stress. All humans are wired with an endocannabinoid system, and we naturally produce CBD, but when we are in a high fight or flight mode, or more of an anxious, wound individual, or someone that goes through more traumatic inflammation based on exercise or depending on your work focus, this can deplete CBD, and adding CBD as an oral tincture or capsule is a great way to reduce that inflammation in the body and support neurological wellness. It actually can counteract cortisol from being released and can be a really turnkey component for quality sleep, as well as also hormone and pain management. You can go on over to scmedicinals.com and use the code AllieMillerRD to save 15% and get free shipping on your order. Again, Again, that's scmedicinals.com. That stands for Santa Cruz Medicinals. And our friends over at Santa Cruz Medicinals recommend doing a 100 milligram a day challenge for 1 week. This allows you to really see with a potent delivery how you feel with the use of CBD. So you can check in on your sleep, check in on your nerves, check in on social anxiety, or any of the reasons why you were drawn to explore cannabidiol. And at 100 milligrams a day, then you can determine if you do well with 50 milligrams. But the problem is many of the products on the market are in a microdose, which really wouldn't have enough efficacy to have impact. And I also will call out, now that CBD is so on trend and there's so many shops popping out everywhere, a lot of that Delta 8 and different derivatives of cannabidiol that are trying to mimic THC, more of the psychotropic or psychoactive component, is not going to be found in Santa Cruz Medicinals products. So these are not going to have any influence of a quote unquote high. There will not be any psychoactive impact. It's just going to be calming and tonifying to your neurological system and have that anti-inflammatory support. So all of their CBD products are going to be lab tested for both potency and purity. And I would recommend playing with their high dose tinctures, like their 20,000 milligram MCT oil. They use a beautiful, just straight up unprocessed MCT oil as a carrier there. They have also some really great pain salves, which can be applied to areas of pain. And then they have capsules as well, which can be used flexibly for all of these reasons. So going over to scmedicinals.com, use Allie Miller RD at checkout and save 15% on your first order. And also you'll get free shipping.
All right. I'm going to let you kind of play podcast host.
All right.
Today, if you will, or co-host, I guess. Right.
I don't know.
I don't know which one we are.
Interviewer.
The one who interviews me for at least the first part. So
love it.
Go ahead and shoot.
Yeah. So just to share with y'all, we have a ton of resources in today's episode. So we will be linking all of our past episodes, all the way starting from episode 21 with my first trimester, one episode of each of my trimesters of pregnancy with Stella, an episode on postpartum nutrition, and then we have keto and pregnancy in episode 134. Then we go into the 180s where we have Becki's first trimester, second trimester, and third trimester with Noah. And then 215 is Noah's birth story and postpartum recovery. So we got a lot of content on there in a very personal approach, sharing our experiences through our pregnancies. And we did not do all that with Mabel because we feel like we got the ground covered.
Yeah.
We did like kind of one general update and included, the variances. So I want to cover, to open up, the tail end of your pregnancy and, that third trimester, what you were doing in preparation for labor, and anything kind of in that preliminary before we get to the birth story.
Yeah, totally. So I was super active just because I'm chasing around a toddler all the time. So a lot of walking, just staying really active this time. More so, I think, than with Noah, because it was, pandemic time. And I feel like there was more like sitting around feeling sorry for myself or something. But just not as much like open. And this time around, I did an in-person workout group that I committed to through second and third trimester, pretty much up until I think 37 weeks. And it was very birth fit based, which I'll link the episode where we had Lindsay on, and this is an in-person coach who does her methodology. So I feel like that really helped with just strength and
it was more heavy lifting, like kettlebells, right? Stuff like that you weren't really doing with Noah, or were you doing that prior?
I don't think I was doing that with Noah because like everything shut down.
Right.
So I just was doing like yoga dance and like some light stuff that I could do on my own at the house. But this is in a legit like CrossFit gym. It's not CrossFit. It's not as scary, but very much intended, toward pregnancy and postpartum. And so that was fabulous and just good support, I think, for a fast labor, which I did have. I was doing my chiropractic care in Austin, very pregnancy and postpartum focused with the Webster method. And I wasn't as obsessed with like the positioning because I just knew inherently that babies usually, unless something is wrong, usually they get into the right position. And So my midwife felt her. I never did an ultrasound beyond the 20-week anatomy scan. Didn't feel the need because we were very confident in where I was getting the kicks and stuff. Gosh, it feels like so long ago that she was in there, but very confident that she was in a good position, for birth. So went into it, feeling confident about that. I did do a virtual birth class. It was called Pain-Free Birth. I would say my birth was not pain-free, not quite, but it was very much focused more on like mindset, taught by a doula, and very focused on mindset, kind of bridging a little bit of like Christian hypnobirthing stuff. I had an app from them as well, but none of that stuff ended up like getting turned on during my labor because it was so intense. It's a good resource if you have time.
Some of it might have been subconsciously in your head. Yes, you never know.
Totally. So kind of just preparation mode toward the tail end. I have a labor and postpartum checklist that I put together for a friend who had a baby around the same time. And then I like printed that out and made sure I had all of my things in order. And when you're preparing for a home birth, the midwife kind of gives you her list as well. So there's like different suppliers that you can go to their website and you order essentially like a birth kit.
Yeah, that was when I turned ghost white, before I knew Stella was a frank breech and all of the things, when I received like the scissors in his hands, birth kit. Yep. And I was like, okay, this is like happening in the house right there.
Yeah. Like full on, all of the medical supplies that you need, down to, the little Chuck's pads, puppy pads, all of the things they have you kind of stock in the house and prepare. And I went above and beyond because I like the gold star for preparation at least, and labeled everything in these like giant Ziploc bags and had it just in the nursery, like this is bag 1 and here's what's inside, just because I knew things could pick up really fast and I didn't want to try to be directing Byron and my midwife. I just wanted them to have everything and go.
And so that's a checklist that you'll share as a link as well. Awesome. Okay.
I will. And then I think toward the tail end, it was like 37 weeks, I picked up like a terrible sinus infection. And this pregnancy in general, I would say was like marked by just my immune system having a really rough time. And I think a big part of that was just having, a 2-year-old. Noah turned 2 right before Mabel was born. But I just caught everything that he got and then some throughout the entire pregnancy. So I had a round of COVID and like a really rough laryngitis / bronchitis go in the early
it was like, because the Omicron was the round of COVID that we got like together. Because I remember the Instagram we did in January when you were like early pregnant.
That wasn't bad, but then after that it really took a turn.
Though it felt like, because the women's wellness workshop was in March, and you were very sick then. And then it just, then we talked about how we did spring break in March also as our families. And then there was the gut bug that went around.
And I got 2 rounds of that. So it was, it was rough. Like second trimester kind of went back up, but then third trimester, Noah started school and picked up some nasty cold. And I tried every natural remedy in the book. I did the X-Clear, I did the neti pot, our Bio C+, cellular antiox, all of our probiotics, vitamin D, everything you can find in our immune protocol, herbal immune I was taking, even though technically I think some of the herbs are maybe not approved for pregnancy at this point. I was like, baby's cooked. And if I don't clear this thing, I can't picture going into labor, never mind like a home birth setting. And I told Byron, I was like, I'm going to end up in the hospital. Like if I am feeling this
not
bad,
enough strength.
Just not enough strength. I wasn't sleeping because it was like full blockage. I've never experienced anything like that. I think it's like the second sinus infection I've had in my life. And this was like, this is bad. And I was doing acupuncture and I found, craniosacral therapy, during that time. And it sort of kind of helped, but it just like would not kick. Ended up even doing IV NAC, glutathione, and a Myers cocktail because I'm like, I need something. And I bit the bullet and went on antibiotics after like 14 days of just severe congestion and could not breathe and could not picture, having a baby in that state.
Well, and I think that that's right. Had you not maybe had that, well, you may not have been as sick if you weren't that pregnant as well.
Sure.
Because your body wasn't able to hold nutrients as much. But I think that that's really, important to share. I think sometimes we're all humans. And at the end of the day, I'm sure you probably don't even remember the prior time that you took antibiotics, but
no, college for like a dental procedure.
I remember having that conversation with you and being like, if the goal is having a home birth, then you take the antibiotics because it's like, it truly, it's such a marathon. And the physiological demands of the body require you to have the ability to breathe, kind of important.
Yes.
And also that physiological strength. And so it ended up being the right choice because 3 days into the antibiotic, you were pretty cleared.
It worked its magic. And the prescriber, the doctor that I saw actually out here in Wimberley, was like, I'm not going to see anyone who makes me mask while I have a sinus infection. And they were still doing that. But he was very much like, after 10 days, you can pretty much like guess that it's bacterial. Like you really, you need to do it. Yeah. But it took 3-4 days and I was breathing.
Yeah. And I know that at that time also, we didn't have out our herbal ginger syrup or our elderberry plus, but those would have been great things to layer in.
Yep. And then the GI immune builder too. It wasn't out yet. But I feel like I would have taken that throughout, and perhaps that would have been supportive.
The entire pregnancy. Yeah. I think that's a good one to layer in if you're feeling overall immune compromised for certain.
Yeah, totally. So anyway, kind of a rough go. Drama, immune wise, a little bit of drama with my gallbladder this time as well. I think I shared that on one of our podcast episodes, but not ever confirmed diagnosis of like a gallstone, but just some irritability, I would say, in that area, like starting second trimester all the way through. And I found I did end up taking our detox packs quite frequently, just to get that like bile
that
driver.
phase 1 liver gallbladder supporter.
And I felt pretty comfortable, doing that occasionally, like, because what's the alternative? Having your gallbladder out during pregnancy?
Right.
It's not really an option. And then supplementing with choline, which we know is really important for babies' brain development, but can also aid in gallbladder and liver health. I used a little bit of milk thistle too, and then I was doing acupuncture pretty regularly just to kind of keep that clear, and that really helped.
And bitters tinctures too, weren't you doing more of those too?
Yeah. I forget the herb farm bitters, like in water, and I forget what else, but I can link my arsenal of
gallbladder
mocktail. Yes.
All right, let's talk about labor and maybe the first onset of false labor, which did you experience that with Noah as well? Or was this, you think, more because you were just so active and doing a lot with him?
Yeah. I had like one incident with Noah, maybe like a week or two before he was born, where we were actually driving to pick up our new car in San Antonio. And I was like, I don't know if I can drive home. But I think it was just electrolytes were off. And that was the one single incident. This baby, Miss Mabel, it's almost like I wonder if she's going to be preterm, and, started like 34, 35 weeks, where it would happen toward the tail end of the day, where I would just have like a ton of what I thought were Braxton Hicks, but with like extreme pelvic pressure.
So not just like that locking of the belly, but yeah.
It's like, oh, this is actually a contraction. Like I don't have to like work through it necessarily, but it stops me in my tracks enough if I'm walking that I'm like, ooh, like I can't take another step until this goes away. And so that was a little bit concerning. Like, is this just the warm up because it's your second baby and your body just kind of like knows what to do, goes into it a little bit more, intensely, or is something going on? And I think what my midwife diagnosed me as is standing on my feet too much and running around after, a 2-year-old and in the heat of, the tail end of summer, being electrolyte depleted, all of the things. And I was still working out through all of this too. So I really had to modify there, just kind of slow things down. I ended up using cramp bark, which is a tincture from Herb Farm that I can link. But my midwife was like, you take a full milliliter of this 3 times a day. Or if you're having a really intense episode, you lay down and you take it until it stops. And so I used like 2 full bottles of that stuff. And then really stayed on top of my electrolytes, was taking extra relax and regulate at that point.
Yeah.
The goal was just keep baby in.
I feel like
she's fully
the
cooked.
relax and regulate is an unsung hero in the world of preeclampsia and also Braxton Hicks.
Yep.
And I think that that's something that we recommend all the time, but maybe isn't like out there circulating in the space. So that's a big, like, kind of make sure you keep that in your pocket, ladies, for any friends or yourself. Really around like 33, 34 weeks, that's absolutely the time, if you're not already taking 2 to 3 scoops of relax and regulate, to really ramp that up. That magnesium bisglycinate really does wonders and can absolutely prevent a lot of complications that drive that iatrogenic or medical induced further complications of concern.
And I was already taking a lot. Like I run at a baseline of 2 scoops. I was up to 3, and I probably went to 4 like when this was going on, and would do it more intermittent throughout the day, or like early evening when I felt like preempting, it's kind of starting, and then maybe my extra 2 scoops at night.
And make it more of like the electrolyte limeade with it, because it's also hot, and again, getting that full scope. So we can put that YouTube video in there too as a resource.
Yes.
Awesome.
I managed to keep her in because 37 weeks is the cutoff for any either birthing center or home birth. You want your baby fully cooked.
Okay. So where were you at on September 17th?
I was 39 weeks and 1 day. It's actually a little further than I made it with Noah. I think he was 38 and a half. So I made it to 39 and 1 with Mabel.
And let's kind of walk through her birth.
Yeah. So September 17th, it was a Saturday, and, had all kinds of plans for the next week or so of just like things to distract yourself.
Try to keep you busy. Yeah.
Because I did close my clinic the week prior, just knowing that, I had an early baby with Noah. This one is kind of warming up already. I just don't want to be emailing my clients at 4 a.m. like I had to with Noah and be like, I can see you in, January. But had cut off clinic, just kind of keeping myself busy. And so we were planning to go to this, like, I think they call it like a petting zoo for trucks with Noah, like I don't know what it is, but it's a fire trucks and dump trucks and like all of these like construction vehicles that he could go and sit in. And I was like, I just feel a little bit off. Like I woke with some light kind of period, like cramping, a lot of just pelvic and rectal pressure. And that continued throughout the morning. And I was just kind of like, I'm going to rest. I need a little break. You take Noah, go off. And I was joking with him. I'm like, I'm glad I didn't just like have a baby right then and there while you were at home.
Right.
Because when it started, it really happened. But I was supposed to rest. Instead, I ended up going into like hyper nesting mode and moving furniture and preparing the nursery and like doing all the things. Cause I think I knew inherently like this baby is coming, whether it's today or tomorrow. Around noon that day, I had a virtual baby shower for one of my girlfriends who lives in Michigan. And it was a super sweet event. Lots of like bliss, oxytocin, even flowing through the Zoom of that. And I swear that like really kicked things up because immediately after like the contractions started feeling a little different where I was like, I haven't had one of these before.
Yeah.
And I was just sitting on the floor in the nursery, on my computer, having to kind of like work through them a little bit. But I still denied to myself and everyone else that I was even in labor because we had plans later that day. I think we were going to meet up and go to like a brewery or take the kids to a playground outside, or something. Yeah. And you called me at like 3 and I was like, I just feel a little off. I don't know what's going on. But you were headed back to Wimberley. You were my go-to for taking Noah for the night. And I was like, no, I think we're fine. I'll let you know. And then not, 15, maybe 30 minutes later, I had to call you back and be like, You need to come get him.
Yep. And I had my nephews in town. So I had 2 boys, Stella, and we were like, we're like an hour away from Austin, and we were like 45 minutes in. It was like, okay, let's swing this boat around and get Noah. But it was lovely. And I also was planning to be Becky's like support doula, or just kind of hold it down on the home front. And I was going to get Noah settled and, get the kids fed dinner. And then I was going to be scooting back to catch the birth, because clearly it would be 9 or 10 or midnight or something like that. And that's not how it went down.
No, not at all. So like by the time you guys actually got there, I think I had surrendered.
The midwife was parking her car. Because I was like leaving with Noah, and the midwife was going in, and I was like, all righty, here we are.
So I called her at like 3:45 while you were on your way. And I finally surrendered to like, okay, I think I'm in labor. I forget what exactly I said, but I think it's happening. And she's like, okay, how close are your contractions? And I said, oh, I don't know, 5-6 minutes, maybe 30 seconds in length, kind of irregular. And she made me stay on the phone for a little while and just kind of talk through the contractions. And she's like, you've had 3 in the past 3 minutes. I've been timing them. Like, I'm on my way right now. This baby is coming. And so, she arrived, her assistant arrived like 4:15 or so. And, did all the things of like checking heart tones right away. And everyone kind of spread out like, okay, you grab the towels. I ended up in the kitchen washing dishes. I don't know why. You just do silly things. But everything was labeled, thank goodness, to, my OCD. Everyone knew their place and where to put things. And I had my birth plan printed out on the table. And it was more just in case birth plan, like in case of transfer. Byron, you grab this packet and, staple it to your forehead kind of thing. But I was washing dishes. I like wanted to cut a watermelon for some reason. Cause I was like, everyone's going to need some snacks, like make sure Monica, my midwife, gets fed. If they're hungry, we'll need this watermelon. And like, you just kind of do like silly things like that sometimes. I don't know why.
And this one, you did not do the castor oil smoothie situation, correct?
I did not need I didn't do any support, like natural induction support at all. Beyond being active, I guess I was like eating some dates here and there, but really, and I was religiously drinking the red raspberry leaf tea mixed with nettle. And so the nettle was throughout pregnancy, and that helps with iron status. And I also felt like was really helpful for like not seeing as much swelling in like hands and feet this time around. And then started mixing that 3rd trimester with red raspberry. That's probably the only thing I did.
And then did you ramp that up the last 2 weeks or whatever, or kept the same ratio?
Not even, because I was having the false labor. I was like, she's coming. She's going to do it on her own time.
My uterus is contracting enough.
Yep, exactly. I don't want to kick that up any more than I have to. And my midwife is pretty adamant of like, she doesn't do those things until we've reached the due date. So I was okay with surrendering to, her due date was September 23rd. And so if we hit the 23rd, I was going to
it was all happening.
Kick it in, but I never needed to. So when they arrived, I did allow a cervical check. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it this time, but I was like, I want to know. Like, I want to know what's happening. Where am I at? And that was like 4:30. They finally got me to stop washing dishes and cutting watermelons and go lay down. And I was at 6 centimeters, 80% effaced. And that means how thin or ripe the cervix is, essentially. And the baby Mabel was at station -1, which means she had already dropped like really low in the pelvis. And my midwife, Monica, was like, you are going to have a baby in your arms in 3 hours. You need to visualize that. And we need to go into the bedroom. We need to get you out of the kitchen. There's nothing else to do. Like, it's time to have a baby.
There you go.
Yeah. And so it really went super fast from there.
So you got birth pool ready and labored in that a little bit, or?
Yeah. According to, I requested all my like notes from the labor, because you don't know timeline when you're in labor. It's like, could be, 6 hours, could be 6 minutes. But it was about 5 p.m. They were getting the birth pool ready, and I was trying to labor in the bed, but I just wanted to be like either moving or swaying. I ended up in this like little corner of our bedroom at the foot of our bed, just on all fours. And Byron was doing some counter pressure. And I would do kind of like a cat cow and then back into like a child's pose, rocking back and forth. Just really giving into like what felt good in my body. Wasn't worried about doing whatever positions. And my midwife and her assistant really didn't feel like they needed to coach me. Like I was just kind of doing it and they were sitting back. I was much more intentional, I think, about like my breathing this time, and like doing horse lips after every contraction, just kind of blowing it out.
Yeah.
And just kind of knowing what to expect.
Which is,
I guess. Yeah. Knowing what to expect this time around, and that, you know, contractions don't last forever, really helped, versus with Noah, I feel like I would like run away from them a little bit or try to get comfortable and fight it. So I was in full surrender mode for sure.
And so although you didn't do the castor oil and not as much vomiting with Noah, right? Or
there was a lot of vomiting.
Because that started, you noted, at around that time, right?
Yeah.
So at that time you're like, give me a bucket, throw up on the floor kind of thing.
Yeah. I had bought myself like the little, I forget what they're called, the little like emesis bags essentially. And I have them now for like car sickness or something. Yeah. So I had those and I was like, I'm going to need one of those bags right now. They had made me try to like eat, and I just threw up everything, including my lunch. I'm like, I can never eat whatever it was, eggplant caponata or something that I had made. Never eat that again.
That's memorable.
Yep, it sure is. Tomatoes, eggplant, not yummy. But yeah, there was vomit for sure. And I know from, you know, my labor with Noah, the doula at that time had said, every time you vomit is another, you know, centimeter of dilation. So had at least 3 vomits with Mabel. Maybe some poop in there for sure. Definitely some poop. And, you know, you're just kind of like clearing everything out. Just like my midwife was so excited that I pooped. And I was like, well, I'm not excited, but I also knew it was going to happen.
It's like that dance, wasn't it, with Noah, right? That you were like, you're like, I'm not having a toilet, baby.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely that connection of uterine and colon release.
Totally.
For sure. And that happened though in the birth pool.
Yeah, they caught it. But
so they said they still would let you labor in there, but you just were done. You were like, get me out of here.
I actually had her. I had her in the water.
In the water. Okay, you did.
So I think their notes say 5:57. I got in the birth pool.
Okay.
And our midwife, like, I saw her. I could see her from where I was. Just kind of like laying on the floor resting. And she had told me that ahead of time. She's like, I might nap. I'm going to leave you alone and I'm going to listen to you. And I will come to you if you need me. But she was very hands off in that way. And I kind of liked it. But I was in the pool for, you know, not very long, I guess, at all. 5:57 to 6:12, she was born.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be out of the water after the poop incident happened just because I was grossed out. But I literally couldn't speak or move beyond just vocalizing through the contractions. They were like that intense. Really felt like I was in a portal of sorts. And you are when you're giving birth, right? It's like the portal between life and death.
Yeah.
But I felt like my body was the portal and I was turned totally inside out, if you will. My body was just pushing spontaneously at, starting at 6:02. They have recorded contractions were like every 2 minutes for 60 seconds. And there was like no time to vocalize any need. It was just get her done. She's coming. Yeah. I do remember being like, Byron, stop pushing so hard on my back. And the doula was like, okay, like just gentle pressure, you know, because he just locks into one thing and did it the whole time. Like, it doesn't feel good anymore because baby's probably right there.
Get out of here.
Yep. Get out of here. No hot, stinky breath, though, I don't think. This time. I didn't have time to think about that. And so 6:02, there was like 10 minutes of spontaneous pushing. And then at 6:10, the assistant midwife came to do the heart tones, and there were no heart tones detected. And so that was
How
like
frequently was she checking that?
Oh gosh, great question.
Just
generally every 30 minutes.
Okay.
But I think as you get closer, it's more like every 15.
So she maybe had right when you got in the water.
Yeah,
or something,
And they have the Doppler that you can go in the water with it versus, in a hospital where you're on consistent monitoring. But I would say like every 30 or so.
Okay.
And so at that point, there were no heart tones detected, and it could have been a really scary moment. But I felt full confidence of just like, it's time to get the baby out right now. There's no heart tones because she's low enough, or she might be distressed because it's like that moment, like she is coming. And that was the only time I pushed with any coaching or effort. And Monica got up off the floor at that point, checked the heart tones herself. Neither of them could get it. And she's like, okay, it's time to push this baby out. And so, maybe 3 pushes or so, which felt like all of the intensity and effort. But she was born at 6:12.
Yeah. And she was born in call. So let's talk about that. We just really briefly talked about it, when you returned to recording with me after maternity leave. But end-call deliveries are when the baby is delivered completely contained within the amniotic sac. And it's considered to be less common than 1 in 80,000 live births. And often this will not happen in a hospital setting if they break your bag of waters, essentially, because that's
they won't let
what
it
the
happen.
sac is. And so there's, some myths about this being good luck for both baby and parents. Parents and midwives in some cultures even like dry and save the call as a good luck charm. One myth is that babies born in call can never drown because they're like water babies. So pretty interesting, cool, wild stuff.
It was super cool. And I really only got a glimpse of it. So I was facing like over the side of the tub, out of the tub. And so she was born through my legs behind me. I was kind of frog-legged. And I wanted to catch her, but it was just too much going on at that point. So I flipped over really quick, and I was like, who's got her? Because she was like in this slippery little thing, didn't realize what was going on. And then the assistant midwife tore the call like as I was kind of turning over and first saw her. So I did get to see it. It was really cool to see the sac kind of opened up, and then she was immediately brought to my chest.
Awesome. So definitely more rapid of a process than Noah. And kind of with Noah, it was like you were like willing and demanding the birth from your body because of that amniotic fluid leak. Also very different oppositional of having a fully intact in call versus a leak. And then, you were trying to go into labor for like you had that 24-hour window. And so it was a very different, probably mental process. But the overall like time stamp was what, from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. basically. So like a 12-hour window from start to finish, because you noted that the cord clamping was at 7:38. Wild.
And 10 minutes of pushing only versus almost 3 hours with Noah, which I highly recommend. For not that you really have control, but I highly recommend it for all of the reasons of recovery. I had a first degree tear, but it didn't require any stitches, whereas I did have stitches and like labial tears from Noah just for laboring, for much longer. It was, fast and furious. It like took some time to catch my breath, I think, after it, because it was so fast, but so redeeming in the sense of like so much less stressful, so much less stress being on a time clock or having to get to a space. I can't imagine with this birth and how quickly things picked up if I had to go to a birthing center or hospital. Like, I don't know that we would have made it. We would have had a car baby, right?
Yeah, no doubt. And let's just talk about the experience maybe of being at home versus the birth center and how that was different for you too.
I mean, I wouldn't do it any other way. If and when we have another baby, I will plan for a home birth at least. I know it's not always in our control, but being at home is just the best. Like, you're in your own space, you know where your stuff is. You don't have to rush to get anywhere. We got to like eat Thai food and be tucked into our own bed by like 9 p.m. And you guys had Noah. So, only had one
Have
kid.
to- yeah. Yeah.
I think I actually slept some that night. Mabel was not maybe as tired or worn out from labor as some babies are because it was so quick.
I remember that with Noah. You're like, he sleeps so much the first like 36 hours. And you're like, oh, no, he's revived.
Yep.
He was real tired. Yeah.
Yeah.
And me with the emergency C-section baby, she came out like a bat out of hell. Like, hello.
Yeah.
I didn't try anything. I just got pulled out of my mom out of the blue.
I'm here.
She was awake the full 24 hours after birth. It was crazy.
She wasn't as sleepy. We didn't get a full night's sleep, but like something about just being in your own bed, not having to go somewhere, and also not having the exhaustion of like the whole night prior. I'd been up, with Noah. I slept a full night the night before, and it was just like a regular day. And I thought I'd be having a 4 a.m. baby, but here she was at 6 p.m. dinner time. It's like perfect, I was drinking champagne and eating Thai food by 9 o'clock.
I like it.
I think there was just a lot less fear this time, especially having done it before. I had so much confidence in letting my body do the work, and really confidence in my team as well. I interviewed several midwives and selected Monica just because she had this like maternal vibe, but also was very hands off. You're going to do your own thing. I'm going to explain to you exactly what's happening. No BS, no fluffy stuff. I really liked that. And I think, having a birth team that is going to respect your wishes, and, she was very, very hands off, and which is what I wanted. This time there was no time for like a playlist at all. Byron put on some music that he somehow had from last time around. It was beautiful chorus, which we often will listen to in our Prana Shakti dance class. So kind of
chanty.
Yeah.
Acapella.
Women's voices. I couldn't tell you what song was playing when I had her because it was such a moment of intensity. But we had some candles going, it was super cool as well. Had my affirmations hung up around the room, but the midwife was like, do you want me to read these to you? And I'm like, no, I'm in it. I'm so good. So again, like had this whole bag of tricks, but didn't really have time to pull everything out. Over prepared.
Yeah. And then just less, I think the whole probably experience again, especially with Noah being born during peak pandemic time. I remember the incident of you going in, you were talking about how you were walking pantless through the parking lot, and they were like, ma'am, can you put a mask on? And you're like, lady, I'm not wearing panties.
I'm not wearing pants. No pants, no underwear, no mask. And even on the way out, they wanted me to put one on for the 15-foot push to the door.
Just feeling that incongruency of whatever with a team that's taking care of you, them telling you to do things that you're not going to do, and having that kind of white knuckleness of a I guess emotional element versus having a synergy of people respecting your wishes, kind of being there but not over intervening and letting it be your process.
Yes, totally. And I
a totally different process.
I vetted them for that stuff right away too. It was we're not masking for any visits. We're not talking vaccine. We were completely 100% on the same page every which way. So,
and then you did helped. For Mabel the drops of the vitamin K instead of that non-preservative vitamin K shot.
Yep.
And also, again, connecting the dots of, we really look at that as a focus for bleed out when it is a tumultuous birth process for baby.
Yeah.
So, potentially in your natural birth kit, you maybe want to have both on hand, and then you make the call of if it was a lot of labor, I feel I want to do that.
Yep.
Or, you know what? She popped out in a protective sack. She is solid.
She is good, cushioned, perfect little head. Everyone tells me she had the perfect head. Yeah. But no real trauma. And I think that's a good point of the vitamin K. If there's trauma, or if it's a boy and you're planning to circumcise, you're going to have to do that actually to get anyone to perform the circumcision. We didn't circumcise Noah, but I know that from that discussion. But we did the oral and just kind of kept up with it. It was just a weekly dose. And she's also getting vitamin K in her D3, K2, which I started
our vitamin D balance
from
blend.
Day 2, I would say, of life.
Especially with her being around brother Noah with all the petri dishes at school.
Oh yeah. She just gets a big old dropper full in her mouth.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's talk about, anything else you want to share in that experience that I haven't asked you before we go into postpartum stuff?
I think, we got glorious, beautiful bonding time. Probably more so than the birth center too, because there's just less boxes
and
to
you
check.
You had to leave versus you didn't have to leave and all that stuff.
So I had like an hour and a half where I just had her on my chest. No one bugged me. I didn't have any need for Pitocin or any heavy bleeding. They were actually really astonished by how little I bled, throughout the whole postpartum period. But I think, again, that's because of the fast labor rate. There was just less trauma, if you will. But I think other than that, highly recommend, would do it again, 10 out of 10.
I like it. Let's talk about postpartum care. So you mentioned this go around, less of like that output, bleed, discharge, less need for the ice packs and postpartum undies and those types of things because there was less trauma essentially to the tissue. It sounds like. And let's though cover, because that is an area of concern, what best practices and things that you have used or have seen used in the world of wound care and regulating tissue recovery and inflammation after birth.
Yep. And I still had all my stuff. I just ended up probably needing it for less days than anticipated. So I had the Frida Mom ice packs, which they make, the Frida Baby Nose Sucker. There's a whole mama line as well. And their products are pretty solid. I just thought it would be easier to have something. It's the kind of ice packs you can like snap and they're a pad and you just pop them in your undies versus like making your own padsicles, which I had done with Noah. It's like, I don't have time for that. I have a 2-year-old. So I had those, used him for like 2 days maybe. I had the Mother Love Sits spray, which is just an herbal spray that goes 360 so you can turn it upside down, kind of spray all around that area. I had Sitz Bath tea that I ended up just using in the bath, like with Epsom salts. And I probably took 1 or 2 baths every single day just because a bath felt good.
Makes you feel like a human again.
Yeah. So every day, like for 2 weeks, for longer than I really needed to, but I had all these nice herbs to use up. A peri bottle that I also filled with that Sitz Bath tea and had Byron making like big batches of that at a time, but I didn't really need it even beyond like 2 days or so. The After Ease tincture was something I did need because the afterbirth pains of a second child are really intense. The first time it was like some crampiness, the first maybe, 6 hours or so. And this time it probably lasted like 36 to 48 hours of like toe curling pain.
Like uterine, like you think your uterine shrinking pain?
Yeah.
Or more like weird bone stuff?
No,
like...
it's all uterus for sure. And it would be like every time Mabel got her latch, which she had a great latch, but it also, contracts your uterus.
That
and I'd have to really kind of like get ready for that. It was kind of toe curling pain, I would say, for sure.
So what were you doing there supplement wise? And did you ever during the process, like when you knew you were in labor, did you ever increase any of the anti-inflammatories or you knew you were going to vomit, it wasn't worth it?
I didn't take anything even that. I might have taken my morning load of
like
supplements.
Super turmeric,
inflammazyme. And pretty much after I cleared that 37-week timestamp, I started kind of preloading on that stuff. And I'll link my whole checklist has like how to load those too, but I'll make sure I put it all in the show notes.
And I know some women swear by during that time high dose oral CBD as well.
Yeah.
That's something you could do, like in theory, again, between contractions or something like that, and likely would stay down because not taking a lot of volume in.
Yep. That was the one thing I like asked for with Noah, but this time there was no time. I did use it a lot actually in that first like 48 hours with the cramping that I was having. That After Ease tincture, the cramp bark, and then inflammazyme at like 9 a day. I want to say those first few days. Super turmeric probably like 6 a day. Relax and Regulate like 4 scoops solid that whole time. And then I was doing like a lot of Epsom salts, topical magnesium spray kind of on the uterine area as well. all of the things, because that really hurt. But it doesn't last forever, because nothing does.
That's right. And same thing, that's where you could also do like a CBD infused Epsom salt bath or something like that too, or some of those pain salves, for sure.
Yep.
All right, good. Okay, so what about updates on breastfeeding? We have episode 225 that will also link in the show notes. And I know that there was some concern with Noah, with, breastfeeding is different and we're not sure how it's supposed to feel and all the things, but a little bit of tongue tie with him that didn't seem to be an issue with Mabel at all.
She has a little like posterior tie that my midwife assessed right away, and we were like, we're gonna wait and see, because her latch is really good. It was good, it was deep. She did the whole sweet little breast crawl right away, and had a good latch from the get-go. And again, I think knowing what to expect makes it easier. There's some nipple pain still, and I think that's just the hormonal cascades and fluctuations, but I didn't need the level of intensity of like putting ice packs on my breasts. I did end up using the silverettes, which I will link in the show notes. And those are like a lifetime. They're made of silver, so they last forever, and you can use them for every baby. But they're just like a little protective nipple cup that you can tuck in your bra in between feedings. Mine kept going missing because my 2-year-old thought they were hilarious and, was hiding them from me. But didn't need as much of the like, breast salves and things of that nature. I had that all on hand as well. And there were unopened ones that I ended up gifting to a friend who had a baby after me. So didn't need that. Didn't need the cabbage leaves that I like sent Byron out to get because I thought I would need it. Really wasn't too bad. I was using the Haka, which is the little silicone like milk catcher, I call it. But essentially you can use it to like stimulate the breast if there is a clog. And you can also use it especially in those early days when everything is leaking everywhere.
The breast that's not being fed on.
Yep. So I would collect and got my milk stash started with that. I would collect like a good 3-4 ounces and freeze that at a time. And I also used it because I did have maybe some clogged ducts, and I used it to do an Epsom salt soak for my breasts. So I would like put warm water, Epsom salt in it, and you squeeze it and release it and put it on your boob. And it kind of sucks and mimics the baby a little bit. And that was helpful. Never had mastitis. But I did end up using some sunflower lecithin as the supplement just a couple times. I have a huge bottle that's just sitting there, and I'm like, why did I Amazon, Prime this huge thing? But it helped with prevention of mastitis, I think. And I also knew what to look for this time in terms of like, what does the clogged duct feel like?
How hard should my breast feel?
Yeah, no one showed me that the first time. And by the time I was seeing a lactation consultant, it was like probably a week into Noah, week to 2 weeks. I don't remember, but, it was almost too late to like show me those signs because I was already in so much pain.
Yeah.
And this time Monica got right in there and she's like, this is what a clogged duct is going to feel like. You want it, if it starts to feel like a firm avocado. And I was like, I know what that feels like. Tested a lot of avocados in my day. You would need to massage that and kind of get that out. And so I was more, I think, on top of like all of the things.
Love it. Yes.
Yeah.
And then Miss Mabel has done well throughout all 6 months with birth weight, regain right away with that 1 week. And, that's beats the goal of the 2 week kind of time stamp as the goal. And, supply seemed all good.
Supply was good.
She's feeding well. The only drama with her was bottle.
Yep.
I forgot.
I didn't put that in.
I don't feel like that's in here, but I feel like you should talk about what bottle, and also it's another kind of surrendering from perfection.
Yeah. Oh man. So we started a bottle with her at 4 weeks, which is generally, what's recommended if you're planning to bottle feed, to start it, once the breastfeeding relationship is established and solid. And she was good. She was, gaining weight like a champ. I never really worried about like, oh, should I weigh her before and after and how many ounces and because again, she's a second baby. Like you just need to keep them alive at this point. But started her at 4 weeks on the same bottles we had done, which are the glass Philips Avent bottles. That's what we had done with Noe. And she was fine. She seemed like she had it down probably through 4 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. Maybe at 8 weeks, we got a little lazy on like not doing as, frequently. But I thought she was good. And then maybe 10 to 12 weeks, probably like right before going back to work. It was the holidays. And so I was like, I'm with her all the time and family's in, and I'm just going to feed her. Like, let's not worry about it. And my mom was supposed to babysit one night, and we realized that this baby actually won't take the bottle that she had been taking anymore. And so I would say, if you are planning to bottle feed, do it consistently, like daily, if not every other day. That would have been a good time for dad to do a feed. Yeah. And, we tried, but in the chaos, it's like my boob is the easiest thing. Why would I go sit with my pump and be 10 minutes away from my baby when I could just feed her? And she was damn efficient too, compared to Noah, I will say. I think girls are more efficient at breastfeeding. Like she can empty a boob a lot faster.
Got to be part of the emotional element of also like knowing that you're going back to work from maternity, and it's you want those minutes. Yeah, every totally. You can milk out of it, if you will.
Yep.
But yeah, I think that that's good advice. Like, if you do know that you have a set timestamp of a maternity leave and you have to return, for sure, like the last 3 weeks, if not leading up, to make sure that like 3 times a week minimum. Baby's being given a bottle, and you play with different friends giving her a bottle, and your husband does Thursday night or Sunday night, and then you get a bath. They draw a bath for you, and they feed the baby a bottle in the nighttime feed, or they feed the feed in the middle of the night with a bottle, and you get to sleep a whole night through.
We still haven't done that. We talk about it all the time.
That should happen. We'll have to talk to Byron on that one. But yeah, I think that that's definitely something to plan for, and it just makes it a lot less stressful. Yes. One more thing to not worry about in your transition of already the emotional shifts of, recalibrating your life and your schedule and your mental and emotional capacity.
Totally. And so I thought at that time, I was like, I'm going to have to call a lactation consultant, not for breastfeeding, but for bottle feeding. And I ended up crowdsourcing just on Instagram when I was like at my wit's end of like, what bottles have you guys used? And people gave me I had 50 responses just on my personal Instagram, and bought like literally every single one. And I just said, I'm going to go through these like night after night until we find the one that works. And we ended up finding the Lancino bottle, which is, it's mostly, I think, like a breastfeeding supply company. But somebody had said those nipples work really well for babies with, bottle aversions and whatnot. And it worked. And they discontinued their glass version, which was another, thing that of course I'm going to be a weirdo about, like not heating milk in a plastic bottle. And so I had to go on eBay and pay like $75 for 2 glass bottles.
The token glass.
It is worth the freedom, I will say.
Yes. I was like, right. And it's like, again, right. You can heat it in glass in a ball jar. Yeah. And then you take your breastfeeding bag, you dump it into a glass jar, you heat that with warm water, and then you pour that into it. And at the end of the day,
your baby's going to be fine.
Yes, your baby's going to be fine. And, you do what you can do.
Yep. Yes. Yep. So she's now doing a bottle several times a week.
And now that you did get the glass one, you're not worried about switching brands at this point. You're like, it's fine.
We're
starting to
sticking with
eat
it.
solids
we're just going with it. And she's eating solids, and it won't be, that much longer that we're breastfeeding, at least as frequently.
Yeah. Let's talk about some nutrition for breastfeeding. So again, we have that whole episode. I think we have 2 episodes, one that I did on breastfeeding and then one with your and Noah's story.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that we really emphasize is caloric density, easy grab proteins and fats, and also hydration, because you can't make the milk if you're dehydrated. It requires a good amount of hydration in the body. So that's where we recommend, like, again, as a compromise. I remember I was so rough in my body after the C-section that I was drinking out of the hospital water with the bendy straw because it was like next to my bed and I could not turn my abdomen because I felt like everything inside was just torn open like a butcher. And I remember like the kinky straw for 4 days and being like, I'm going to drink out of the kinky straw because this is what's easiest for me to move. And the glass straw, the ting of the glass straw was annoying me and it just wasn't happening. So yeah, you know, we all make our little compromises. Or there are the like Yeti water bottles that have, still a plastic straw, but maybe a straw would be helpful in the first week. Something to consider there. And then, you know, having water kind of spread out throughout the household is key. Bone broth based soups would be a big thing because then you're going to get beautiful electrolytes and protein and especially just for convenience, you know, being able to sip broth as a great nutrient dense source, maybe even at like a room temp. So it's easier, quicker chug and
you don't spill it on your baby's head.
All of that. And you did a lot of pre-batched meals kind of starting at like week 34, right? Or something like that.
So I had frozen like a bunch of like nut flour muffins, pancakes, and also thinking about like, how's Noah going to go to school with a lunch? What's he going to be eating? How can I take the most pressure off of our family unit? And so we had like a lot of freezer stuff stash. I made some like cauliflower mashed shepherd's pie that was frozen that came in handy.
Spaghetti squash casserole.
Spaghetti squash casserole, carnitas. So we had some good like freezer meals that we could go to when it had just been a day. I also made some nut balls, kind of a modification of the Berry Zesty Boost that are on the blog, where I actually added some brewer's yeast and some of the other lactation supporting compounds in there.
We'll link the lactation cookies as well with the kind of oatmeal raisin
riff.
Never
got to make those this time around.
You still can.
I still can. I'm still lactating, so I still could do it. But it's
okay, Brady likes them and he's not lactating.
Yeah, you don't have to be.
So far. He's like, I love those cookies. And I'm like, well, you don't need the brewer's yeast though. We'll just make them, they'll taste the same.
Yep. They won't make you lactate if you're a male. I don't believe.
Nope.
A lot of like bone broth based soups. So still did a lot of the kind of Korean tradition of lying in warm foods. Byron would bring me like this giant bowl of soup, but then we have 2 kids. So it's like, someone has to hold the baby, feed the toddler, and soup is harder to get in. So I think I transitioned to smoothies like a lot sooner just to make sure that I was getting adequate nutrition.
And our grass-fed whey is a great way to get all of your protein needs in a bioavailable form and also get that boost of the immunoglobulins, be that it's non-denatured, also getting a nice boost of glutathione there. So I think that's something to put as a essential for like a postpartum kit for a friend or whatnot, you know, beyond some of the other supplement support. I think the Naturally Nourished Grass-Fed Whey and maybe even like the smoothie ebook would be a nice, a nice thing because that works that 2-for-1 of the hydration and of course meeting your protein needs. And like you said, more convenient to sip than hot soup, regardless of the time of the year. And then you also have, you know, a good amount of snacks and like the Perfect bars, Epic bars, and all of those will have linked in our Amazon store. So a lot of options there. Nutrient density with organs, as we're always talking about, whether it's like a simple bolognese or the mini meatloafs with liver and bacon or some form of meatballs. And then other electrolyte support beyond bone broth would be probably reaching into the coconut water and then doing that like electrolyte limeade with the Relax and Regulate.
Yep. And I went through a couple containers of the Relight from Redmond, like the unflavored as well, that I picked up at the event we did with them earlier in the year. So that was great and helpful as well. And Noah would like drink out of my water bottle, spit it out immediately. Ooh, salty.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Let's just touch on a couple like focused superfoods. And these could kind of go across the board. We have them noted in our show notes on breastfeeding superfoods, but I think that these could be throughout pregnancy. They're just superfoods in general.
Superfoods, but yeah, they're all
but they can grow a super baby and also help with postpartum recovery and breastfeeding. Let's start with leafy greens.
Yeah, so we talk about this all the time for folate during pregnancy, so that 2 to 3 cups of leafy greens kind of stays standard throughout breastfeeding, just tons of antioxidants, micronutrients that are getting passed on, through the breast milk. And apparently, mothers who consume vegetables regularly while they're breastfeeding are going to have less picky children as they get older. So they're getting some of that like bitterness
Sulfurous.
from the greens, sulfur compounds. I would say like soups or smoothies are the easiest way to get leafy greens in. Ain't nobody got time for a salad around here.
It's a lot of chewing, but a green smoothie.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then omega-3 fatty acids. So we think about these. We didn't mention this, but I'm sure you upped your omega-3s when you upped the super turmeric and the inflammasine postpartum as a pain management and anti-inflammatory as well.
I just stayed on 4 a day throughout because that 1 gram of DHA is really the gold standard in the research for supporting babies' brain development. Those extra, 5 IQ points or whatever, whatever we get. And my brain too, I was like hyper aware of, mom brain plus baby brain plus postpartum brain. It just compounds.
Yeah.
So I was on 4 of that like throughout
but
the
you could
entire
go higher.
pregnancy. You could go up to 6
to 8.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yep.
And I mean, that's where I'm often telling women in their 3rd trimester to switch to our EPA DHA extra liquid, especially if you're just getting capsule fatigue with your prenatals and everything. Usually 1st trimester when there's maybe some nausea or adversions, that might not be the time to go for the liquid omega-3. But for sure in this postpartum time, and especially that 3rd trimester, that's usually my recommendation is why don't you go for a tablespoon and a half, and then you're actually getting more equivalent to like 5 capsules. And I think that works really beautifully too. So beyond the omega-3s in supplements, we would go for wild caught fish. So this could be making up a big old batch of a couple cans worth of like a skipjack tuna salad to mow down quickly with a fork. And then you're making that calorically dense by adding maybe avocado oil-based mayo or olive oil-based mayo, or chopped olives in there, etc. Cooking wild salmon as a family dinner a couple times a week would be beautiful. To get that omega-3 fatty acid for, continuous support for baby's brain, nervous system, but also for you in that recovery as an anti-inflammatory.
Totally. And then eggs would be highly recommended, and they're an easy, quick cook protein, semi-portable if you're doing like hard-boiled eggs, or maybe making a batch of like egg muffins for the freezer, or requesting those of a family member who's cooking for you. But, for the B12, the folate, the choline, all of the essentials for healthy growth, all of the B vitamins, because we know that breastfeeding, you're on higher demand of everything, right?
Absolutely. And then kind of going off of that, when I think of choline, I think of egg yolk, bacon, and liver.
Yes.
So in the world of beyond organs, just getting ample red meat, really important. In fact, the World Health Organization recommends new mothers consume an extra 25 grams of protein per day during the first 6 months of breastfeeding to ensure that there is adequate milk production. And in order to have adequate milk production, again, you need enough hydration, you need enough calories, and you need enough protein. Those are kind of the big. And then there's micronutrients, of course, of focus. But when we're talking about micronutrients with red meat, and why I would recommend specifically red meat at least 5 times a week, we're really trying to get that iron and red blood cell rebuild going on, a nice dense source of B12 and zinc. And then the grass-fed sources are going to also have a good omega fatty acid profile for us. And these are, so like grass-fed burger, a great choice in this early postpartum, and then even, through the breastfeeding process, and something I recommend throughout pregnancy as well.
Totally. I feel like I was a protein hound this time postpartum, and kind of still am, where I'm getting at least 100 grams a day. So at least that extra 25 and then some, but probably like 100 to 120 a day.
And we didn't
still right now
research on for this episode, but I do know that there's some staggering statistics out there about vegan mamas.
Oh yeah.
Or protein insufficiency with pregnancy and unfavorable outcomes, as well as with breastfeeding.
Yeah.
So definitely, this is not a time to have an aversion to biological animal sourced protein.
Nope. Nope.
Okay. And then this one would be more unique to just breastfeeding, likely fennel and fennel seeds, unless you're having fennel in a delicious slice of salami, which I do like the OG of the Salameria, which has fennel in there.
Which is also a great portable protein-rich snack that can sit on your bedside and you shove it in your mouth when you have time.
We'll link our friends over there. And I think you can still use Allie Miller RD. We had them on as guests a couple episodes back. Goodness, probably 50 episodes back at this point. But fennel and fennel seed, this would be a great thing to increase the breast milk volume. You'll even see fennel seed in a lot of teas.
Yep. Like the Milkmaid tea, which I did use, proactively, but didn't really need it for like supply issues necessarily. I just had a bunch on hand.
Okay. So punch list as far as let's go into supplements and then we'll start to wrap things up here. So kind of punch list out supplement essentials for breastfeeding and pregnancy. And we can call out if there's a variable, but I'm going to categorize them as one.
I think it's pretty much the same. Like I took the same thing.
Yep. So we're going to definitely get all 4 capsules daily of the multi-avail mama.
Yep.
We're going to be getting in that EPA DHA extra, at least getting that gram, like you mentioned, of DHA. So aiming for 4 capsules or that tablespoon little overage of the liquid. Probably especially, maybe not through the whole pregnancy, but especially early postpartum, doing both the targeted strength and the rebuild spectrum. We use the Restore Baseline probiotic in our Mama to Be bundle. And so that is a quarter of the potency of the targeted strength. And we just like to really ensure that we have good optimized microbiome, especially in the early postpartum time, to prevent infection and support a robust immune response. And that rebuild spectrum could absolutely be pulsed in throughout pregnancy if under the weather or exposed to any kind of gunk.
Yeah. And I recommend it with any history of group B strep as well, just starting 3rd trimester. So I had no drama with that. The midwife gave me the test to go do myself in the bathroom versus them poking you in the butt, which is the worst thing in the world when you're not expecting it. But it was negative this time.
And our women's flora probiotic is a great technique add-in for that 3rd trimester for that reason as well. That has that lactobacillus reuteri and rhamnus forms. And so that's going to be that vaginal optimal flora and also play a role in kind of prevention in that space. So the rebuild spectrum and women's flora would be good add-ins for that. And also women's flora for postpartum tear and vaginal microbiome recovery would be huge. Vitamin D balance blend, probably capsule for mom, liquid dropper for baby.
Yep.
Osteofactors, I think we don't talk about enough truly, unless we're on the topic of bone health and perimenopausal, but really in the world of prenatal and postpartum, especially with breastfeeding. We had talked about when we ran our micronutrients, how Becki was deficient functionally in calcium. And I think you ran that just a month after weaning or a week after weaning, or it was a little bit after weaning. And so mind you that we are draining from mama's calcium stores while you're building baby's bones in utero. And then, when we deliver that baby, we are leaching calcium out with breast milk production. So those osteofactors, MCHC form of calcium in there, would be really a key essential at 3 a day throughout the breastfeeding process. And then even I would stay 6 months post wean to make sure that your calcium is optimized. And then, you might pull that back out and then start again at around 2nd trimester of pregnancy is when we start to really see the need for more calcium.
Yeah, totally. I've been much more proactive about that one this time around. And so far so good. No bone pain, which I was having the first time.
There you go. It's an indicator.
And then B complex, I would add on just for all of the B vitamin demands, with breastfeeding, but also with pregnancy. There's a good amount of choline in that as well.
And for some mamas with breastfeeding, especially if they're having any, or just postpartum, if they're having any mood concerns, I'll actually put them on the Methyl Complete instead of adding in that B complex, because they're still getting a good array of B vitamins with the multi-avail mama. But that Methyl Complete is going to be a little bit more supportive for postpartum depression, getting a little bit more of that serotonin conversion going on, and then still has, of course, the methylation factors to regulate that inflammation in the body.
Totally, especially if you have known MTHFR variant or
and a good energy boost too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, our friend Relax and Regulate would be an essential. And those are the big ones that we have noted here. But I know that also then you had, as we talked about in your early pregnancy episode, decided to stay on the adaptogen boost throughout this whole pregnancy. And so some women would go back on that if they had taken it out, because you're definitely going to need that stamina and resilience to fatigue-induced stress. And we know that the stress management is so important when we're talking about breastfeeding, and especially that early time of connection with baby. If our nervous system is just wired and fired and fried, for many people also it'd be very appropriate to get going with Calm and Clear
I
right
took that
postpartum to just
sure.
let your nervous system get back into that safe space and mellow everything down after the adrenaline surge that occurs from the birthing process.
Yes, totally. I noticed how bitey I was with Byron. It's just a lot, adapting to 2 kids and figuring out everyone's needs. But, there are times I could have been nicer, and I did keep a bottle of Calm and Clear right by my bed for those first few weeks at least. Yeah.
Good. And then for baby, we're doing that vitamin D balance blend, about 1/4 of an ml, a couple times a week, 3 to 4 times a week in the new infant phase. And then as we cross over into the teens of weight, our bottle changes at 20 pounds, the dosage and frequency. And then we could do for baby also, there is a good probiotic by Metagenics, the baby probiotic drops, Metakids, and about 6 drops of that you can put on your fingertip or on your nipple. And, that's kind of determined if mama is doing the quality probiotics of our targeted strength and rebuild spectrum, you are passing your microbiome to baby daily through breastfeeding. So that's something you can kind of play by ear if seeming necessary.
Yep. And then I might add the GI immune builder. Mabel really has had beautiful, amazing skin this whole time. Whereas Noah had some eczema, cradle cap stuff. I wonder if it's just because I don't mess with her as much. I don't have time to brush her little head or whatever. But I think she's not exhibiting any signs of GI distress or anything like that. But as I'm adding, solid foods in, I'm thinking that that's going to start coming into the mix in her bottles a couple times a week as well, especially with how much, sickness still goes around from Noe being in school.
Love it. So fun hearing your detailed description of the birth process and how baby number 2 has been an equally delightful but different ride for you. And I think that's what we hear from mamas. Of course, every child is going to be unique, and every experience as a mama with that child is going to be equally unique. So I think this is really great to just take the time to pause to honor Miss Mabel. And hopefully y'all that are listening have taken some good notes on products that are recommended, some postpartum support, breastfeeding, superfoods, and so much more. As always, we put all of the links in the show notes on each episode from wherever you're listening. And then every episode is housed at naturallynourishedrd.com. But if you're looking for any of the Naturally Nourished supplement line, or you want to grab a spot in our Wimberley Wellness Workshop or a free spot in our Women's Hormones class, go on over to allymillerrd.com.
Thank you for listening to the Naturally Nourished podcast. Visit our blog at allymillerrd.com for recipes, wellness tips, and food as medicine meal plans. Connect with Allie and Becki at allymillerrd on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Until next time, stay nourished and be well.